How you guys doing here? Marvin Bragg Jr. This is Sam 700. For my capstone project, I'm going to be talking about biometrics implemented in the NBA. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and let's get started. So first, we're going to talk about some background information on what biometrics is and how it will look like in the NBA. So biometrics is the science of measuring and analyzing data collected from the body, such as a heart rate or hormone levels. I'm looking to implement this in the NBA, such as tracking players' heart rates on the court, whether it's in practice or in games. Look at the occurrence of injuries. How often a player gets hurt, what injury that is. In load management, how much a player is producing on the court, and how that affects their player performance as well. And using biometrics, I'm hoping to look for the NBA to use this to track trends amongst players. Um, Trends as far as like primarily looking at the injuries, seeing how often do players get hurt. If they played 3 games in 5 days, or if they played this many back-to-back games in a year. Look at all that small stuff just to see what trends can they see across the NBA. So therefore, they can prevent this in the future. The NBA is growing, technology is growing as well. So being able to use some sort of a statistic analytical data in order to help these players stay on the court will make the NBA happy, as they will be generating more money. Will make the fans happy because they'll get to see their favorite players on the court. And also the players happy because players don't like to be injured. They want to be able to be on the court and actually produce and play and have fun. So going into the problem statement, I'll be focusing on with implementing biometrics. How can the NBA reduce injuries? Like I said, these players, we want to keep these players on the court as much as possible. So how can they use biometrics to reduce that? So, but I did a research over a couple articles, that I found interesting that could actually help me with this, with this idea. The first one was looking at the number of players sidelined per game due to injury. This was the season after COVID. So, the 2020-21 season, to be uh, specific. The injuries that were non-COVID related, or rest as players do load management. This was 5.1, was the average number of players, which included both teams. So 5.1, on average, players were sidelined per game during that season. That was the highest since they started tracking '09 and '10. And the next highest season was 4.8 players. So the 2020 season was 5% higher. And this was after the COVID year, so they had short. This was a shortened season, so you saw an increase of players being hurt. The NBA back tried to partner with this company, which actually had a really good idea. They were going to create a device where NBA players use this in practice, not in games, but only practice. And technology can help a coach decide who needs rest, who needs to work more, or who might be at risk of injury. Pretty much going under that whole load management category I talked about earlier. Looking to see what player is doing what on the court or in practice, I should say, just to see if you can get more out of that player, or that player is overexerting itself and may cause an injury, down the line. These devices can definitely help out with that because we want to keep these players on the court as much as possible. The last article I found discussed how the professional soccer teams use a GPS device during their training and matches. They get the data from the GPS to detect patterns, and it gives them a probability that a player will get injured in the next days or next weeks, depending on how much they've been doing, how much they've traveled on the field, there's cuts here and there. They're pretty much their load management in soccer, and they try to see prevent these players from injuries because some players may be overexerting themselves without the correct data, whether it's a heart monitor or tracking their production on the court. Coaches really won't know. So implementing this will definitely help out coaches get a better feel for what their players are doing because some players might be out there not giving it their best. I know it's a long, 82 game season, but each game does matter. So looking at some strategies and solutions, applying the data the correct way. Each team and coach is different. So therefore applying this data to your specific team to know whatever the coaching play style is, also the players, in order to produce, the correct plan for practices, workouts, and rest for each player. Every team is different, every player is different. So you have to look into how this data can be applied to those two specific things. in order to enhance and increase lower the risk of injury on the court, because we want to see these players on the court. Um, One solution that comes to my mind is higher intensity, which would equate to shorter practices. Being able to go harder for a shorter amount of period of time will definitely keep these players off the court. If they're on average having a 3 hour practice, you can go harder, harder reps, harder little series within the practice, and cut that practice time down to an hour and a half and 2 hours. Gives the players, the player can definitely go and stay in the gym and get more shots up. But you want to keep the cream of the important piece and the important parts of practice, whether it's going 5-on-5 live or different shell drills on 3-on-3 full court or whatever it is. But keep those higher intensity but shorter. I think this will definitely help players with their rest and recovery, because we don't want players on their feet. It's a long 82 game season. And also, they have practices and traveling, all this other in between. So, it does take a toll on their body. So if we can get these guys, in the gym, go hard for, hour and a half, 2 hours, and you can use other hour, time on your own, I believe that this will help, these players, be healthy throughout the season. This is just, a step towards that. So communication strategies, I believe the NBA and the NBA Players Association definitely needs to, have a conversation and with this. I mean, COVID did hit. It did was very detrimental to everybody across the world. It definitely hurt the NBA as they had to take a hiatus mid-season. They got to finish up in the bubble in Orlando, but then the year after, they had a shortened season. Shortened rest, less games, but the rest was the important thing, because guys who usually go deep into the playoffs, such as LeBron James, he's already getting less rest than the guys who don't make the playoffs, and then also was a shortened rest off season. So he definitely got less rest. It affected him and his teammates. People across the NBA, as there was more injuries occurring, particularly in soft tissued injuries. Um, Going into the next bullet point, sit down amongst teams, having a sit down, with the coach, the specific players, and the training staff as well, to create a specific game plan, a specific plan, training plan for these players in order to, prevent them from getting these injuries. Injuries happen. It's a part of sports. But, if they can train the correct way, cover the correct way, I believe, this can help out the NBA. And using biometrics can definitely help out as they can track, the little small things. Look at these different trends. I also think that the player unit should create a study to show how the shortened rest affects on-court performance. Shortened rest in the off season, and also shortened rest during the year. A lot of these teams are playing back-to-back games, got to travel here and there. That takes a toll on your body. So if they can, use biometrics or whatever analytics they want to use, to create a study to show the NBA how this affects them, they can probably see a better, scheduled out season. It's already very, very lengthy, from the October all the way to currently right now. The NBA Finals is probably going to occur in June, so you know, being able to show how a long season, with not as much rest throughout the season because you're playing so many games, how that affects the person's body. Everybody will be different from age, to tenure, to positions, to team style and identity. It's all different. So being able to have these different trends that you can see throughout the league will definitely help these players play their case on rest. So in conclusion to all of this, understanding the athlete is very important. Each athlete's different. The LeBron James of the world is different from the LaMelo Balls. They're both talented players, but what LeBron James does for his team different from what LaMelo Ball does for his team. LeBron's been in the league longer, way longer than LaMelo Ball. Been in the playoffs, so his body types are too different. Understanding the athlete is very important because the correct training and recovery is important as well. You're not going to treat LeBron James the same way as you treat Austin Reeves, who's the rookie on the Lakers. They're going to get two different treatments. They're going to push Austin Reeves more because he's younger. He doesn't play as much, so they can get more out of him. LeBron is going to have more recovery type practices where of course he's gonna have his skill workouts, but he might not participate in every single live drill. He might be doing more recovery, more weight based stuff, and getting his body recovered so he can play this whole lengthy year and a deep playoff run. The adequate amount of rest in the offseason is very important as well because these players need that. During the season, they're traveling, practicing every single day, playing every other day, sometimes back to back. This offseason, of course, they still work out, but it's not as strenuous on their body because they're not traveling nearly as much and aren't playing game nearly as much. So having that, off-season rest is very, very key to a lot of these players, success in their careers. Going to the next bullet point, each team data will look different. Each team is different. The way they play is different. Some teams are more up and down. Some teams are more half court based. So looking at those trends as far as practices and potentially games, and how much how much output these players are putting in will definitely factor into their recovery and training as well. And using this to enhance recovery across the league. Biometrics, this can definitely help out the NBA, keep these players on the court because injuries are a pain. We want to see the players on the court. Our favorite players on the court. The coaches want their players on the court. So they can win games. So being able to track and create trends. Look at trends for your teams and across the league in order to enhance the recovery. Um, I don't believe the NBA is going to shorten its season, but in the recovery of these players is very, very key, and that needs to be a focus. Um, I want to thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.